To be inviting up the next speaker for this evening. He is my twin brother, Andrew Mueller. Yes, twin, believe it or not. I know most of you know us, but some don't, believe it or not. I've heard many things about this speech, and I am very excited to see it. All right? So, please welcome up Andrew Mueller giving a speech on No Laughing Matter, the importance of human satire. Yeah.
They didn't want to stand to do this thing. So I don't need How are we all doing?
Good.
How are you? Oh, thanks for asking. I'm sure you'll figure out soon. Oh yeah, trust me, it's all about presentation. To get us warmed up, I decided to prepare some warm-up material for the audience that they would like to listen to. All right, let's get this started. I prepared for you just this very occasion. Oh, my mom is in the audience. Can't use that one. Definitely can't use that one. Yeah, no, not that one. And, oh, yeah, Mr. Kemp's in the audience too. All right, you know what? Who needs startup material? That's overrated anyway. I am here to give my presentation about humor and satire and its importance in our society. This is a very serious presentation, so please bear with me. You might cry, you might laugh, you might do both. If so, I don't know, I didn't bring tissues. Let's get this thing started, shall we? This is a quote from George Meredith. He states that the true test of comedy is that it shall awake thoughtful laughter. If something is funny and it makes us think more, then naturally it'll stick more and it'll be more impactful. And because of this, I think that we should apply this to all of our jokes. That's where comedy and satire is actually best found. Next slide. This is my thesis. Humor and satire are forces of profound power because of their ability to transform. This is within an individual, but also within groups and societies as a whole. As we gain insight and perspective through humor's power to upend our expectations, bond people together, and speak truth to corrupt power. I know a lot of people brought up 1984 in their presentations, which is a great example of corrupt power, but trust me, there is not a lick of humor in that book, trust me. Next slide. Next slide. Humor defined. Humor is hard to identify because it is culturally and temporally influenced. What we find funny is different to certain cultures, and what we find funny is unique to each and every single person here. Like, what I find funny is definitely not funny to something Gabby finds funny. Perhaps I tell a joke that lands with most audience, but for other people it lands flat. It's all about making sure we have the fundamental basics of comedy, that being it needs to violate and it needs to have truth. Which brings me to my first theory. Next slide. This is Benign violation theory. It is about not harmful in effect, but it is also truthful. See that little sweet gray area in the middle right there? That's Benign violation theory. That's the sweet spot. That's where we want to get this whole time. What it needs to do is it needs to be true and it needs to violate, but it can't do more than the other. If something violates more than it is truthful, that is just an insult. I can say, your shoes look funny. That's kind of funny, but it's mean, you know? And this theory is applied to many jokes and many different kinds of art forms of how comedy can be expressed, and we'll be going over the different forms that comedy can take for us to fully comprehend what comedy is. Next slide. As stated before, Various forms of humor. It's unique to everyone. It's portrayed in many different art forms. It's seen in literature. It's seen throughout art. It's seen in history. And heck, some of it's even seen in the Bible. Like, I know that's hard to believe. Just bear with me here. But the Bible has some funny stuff in there. All right, next slide. All right, humor in literature. We see humor in literature in pretty much most books to keep the reader engaged, unless it's a calculus textbook in which... Sorry, Miss Montano. First, we got the porter in William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Now, pay attention to this porter character. He's really important. He'll be coming back later. He's a ridiculous drunkard who describes his job as guarding the gates of hell. And this is before a murder scene, so keep that stashed away in your mind. That's important. Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales has different tales depicting many people of different classes as an estate satire. One of the characters in that book is the friar, who intentionally tells the group to steer clear of theological topics and then proceeds to make it theological. Hi. All right, Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Description of characters and their behaviors. Uncle Pumblechook, for example. He's described as a large, hard-breathing, middle-aged, slow man with a mouth like a fish, dull staring eyes, and sandy hair standing upright on his head. Now, if I saw someone like that in public, I would run for the hills. But this is completely normal in that book. And it's just one of the ways in which humor shows exaggeration to make things funny. More on the Friar's Tale, Geoffrey Chaucer uses estate satire to exaggerate traits to make things funny, while also keeping some sort of truth, which is akin to Benign violation theory as seen in the middle. What we can end up doing is analyzing how much is true and how much is an exaggerated lie. That's sort of where the genius of Geoffrey Chaucer's story is, because he has this sort of thing for pretty much all the different classes in society at that time. Next slide. Incongruity theory. We find funny what's unexpected. What goes against what we find normal or expected triggers. Humor throughout history. Humor has many instances in history as seen as far back as ancient Egyptians. Rough sketches were discovered in pyramids. From what we can infer based on what was left behind of that civilization, it is clear to us that people of ancient Egypt often considered themselves with satire that undermined the social decorum. Next slide. Examples of this include in the temple of... I'm not going to pronounce that. I do not know how. This portrays the Queen Punt, as an overweight, horrible creature that is standing on top of a donkey. The caption reads, "The donkey that had to carry the queen." And this is apparently what the queen even found this funny, because this sketch was repeated countless times throughout the pyramids. And it's even seen with animals playing, I hope that's chess. We see many different exaggerated and ridiculous kinds of comedy, and those animals playing chess is another form of incongruity theory at play. Next slide. Humor in history. Humor is seen not in war itself, but in comics depicting the flaws of war. World War II had plenty of comics and cartoons finding humor in the issues that civilizations had to live through. As mentioned earlier, the appeal came from the truth, as well as touching on a sensitive subject such as war. Here we have 2 sentry guards. One thing they can't understand about this sentry business. Can you imagine anybody answering phone? The joke is that you gotta ask friend or foe, and who right mind would say so. Next slide. Humor in modern times is seen through different forms, such as modern television, as seen as The Simpsons, and different kinds of stand-up comedians of all their different take and different flavors of comedy. Hence why people all have their own favorite comedian. It's not one stand-up comedian, and that is it. We find this funny, and we all have to find it funny. Everyone has their own taste, and this relates back to a Chris Ramsey on stage as seen in showing of him on Comedy Central. Next slide. Act 2. How does humor and satire transform us? Now that we know what humor and satire look like, we actually get to dive into what it does to us. which is all where the magic happens. Next slide. Humor and the brain. Having a firm grasp of humor means where we can find humor. It's definitely seen in how we react to things, and is it more than just a quick, It is! Next slide. Humor and the brain. In a study conducted in Michigan State University, statistics have shown that laughter sometimes can be the best medicine for a person. Laughter that comes from humor and satire allows the brains to release endorphins via our opioid receptors. Very sciencey words, I know. Endorphins being the chemicals in our mind that help us feel good. If we laugh at something, we have that temporary moment of relief. Which brings us to, oh, there he is. He's back. This is the porter from Macbeth. When we laugh, we let out pent-up nervous energy. Yeah, relief theory, it provides us relief from what we find stressful and scary. And this is most best seen through the porter in Macbeth. The porter is a character who is a drunk slob, and he is making fun of his job because he is completely loopy. This is before, well, right after actually, this is right after the king gets killed. All this stakes and tensions is being brought up, and now the scene is focusing on this drunk idiot. And that's where we find relief in Macbeth. Next slide. Humor and behavior. Humor and satire naturally makes us smile. If we're smiling about a joke and getting happy about it, then we're obviously in a better mood. But that being said, humor can be directed in different directions. It can be directed towards society, it can be directed towards someone we find incorrect, but it can also take the form of self-deprecation. Self-deprecating humor can allow us momentary relief from our problems, but it is ultimately more harmful than good, because if we internalize and find comfort in berating ourselves, it will ultimately lead to a spiral of self-doubt and pity, and it just ultimately isn't healthy, and it's something we should all stay away from. Next slide. Humor in the Bible. I told you. Humor in the Bible. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouting. Ha ha ha. Thank you, Job. You cracked me up. That hit my sides. If comedy and humor influence how we act, then naturally when we are in a happier and positive mood, we are more likely to treat our neighbors in a kind way. I'm in a good mood. That means I am not going to say something that I would say when hangry. I am not going to get grumpy in the hallways. I am in a good mood, and humor will bring that good mood to us. And next slide. And when we're in this good mood, we can spread this joy to other people. A lot of people ask if God has a sense of humor. I personally think he does, because he did something that made me stand on this stage. God created us in his image, and human beings have developed a sense of humor. Because God created us, God also created humor. And humor is a gift that we are meant to share to other people, such as comedy and just allowing us to bond and bring people closer to us. Next slide. Act 3. How humor brings us together. Small scale to large scale. Now, what small scale to large scale means is smaller social groups and larger social groups. Small scale means friend groups, neighborhoods, communities, family. Larger scale means our country, our planet, our ecosystem, and it's basically larger concepts of what we find important, such as the government. Smaller scale social bonds, it is basically shared context. Comedy can bring us closer together with inside jokes. And if we have inside jokes with our friends, it will ultimately bring us closer and form some sort of kinship through humor and satire. Next slide. Humor and small scale social bonds continued. Humor and social cohesion. Jokes that are made with the intent to be funny can also come across as rude. If the violation aspect of benign theory overpowers the careful kindness, it will lead to segregation in our friend groups. And if you don't believe me, please take a look to the person sitting on your left. That is my source. Trust me, you and your friends get into little disputes. I've seen it in the hallways, do not deny it. Next slide. This is superiority theory, which also can be found in inside jokes and friend groups. We laugh at those who we look down upon, those whose circumstances are poor, or remind us of us in a former state. We can make fun of something to make ourselves feel better and bring people down. We should not do that. We should try and bring people together as a form of bonding with other people. Next slide. Now we're moving over to larger scale social change. Satire at its core is a humorous look at the faults of individuals, groups, and institutions by first identifying an element worthy of ridicule and then magnifying it. Humor and satire have forever been crucial methods of enforcing societal change in this regard, as we use satire to figure out what is worthy of being ridiculed and magnifying it in the public eye. Next slide. Punching up and punching down. Punching up and punching down refers to a form of comedy where we are directing our comedy at. Punching up, our government is corrupt. Punching down, aha, you're poor. We should, punching down, you got a quick laugh, but it's kind of destructive at its core. Punching up is where the actual societal change can be found. Because if we express these problems with comedy, they're easier to understand and they are more magnified. If things are magnified, more people will understand it, and more people will want to do something about a current problem in society. Next slide. Now, here's an example of large-scale social change in history, seen through court gestures. Court gestures are essentially clowns. They're ridiculous. They're silly. They are meant to do a whole bunch of weird stuff. What court gestures' roles were in medieval society was to make jokes, but also do it in a way to inform the king of what they're doing wrong. In fact, in one instance depicted in this image right here, this is a court jester that has a tail in which he slaps the king on his behind and says, "Sorry, I thought you were the queen." This court jester is incredibly crude, and he is sentenced to his death. But because the king finds this guy so funny, he's going to let him to choose how he dies. Of course, the court jester takes advantage of this and says, "I wish to die of old age." And it works. He lives. This is an example. Humor and large-scale social change is also seen throughout Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, as mentioned earlier. Medieval England, 1392, punching up. This is an author poking fun at pretty much every single societal social norm that we've seen in the medieval England. It's made to inform and it's made to make people aware of how everyone is actually viewed in the society. Next slide. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice provides societal critique on the way social classes and statuses were viewed and handled back then. Women at this time were essentially completely helpless in regards to how men were treated. Men had all the power. Women would get power from the men. And women were essentially forced to marry, or else they would be stuck in an unfavorable and uncompromising spot in their lives. Hence why, throughout this book, getting married is pretty much every page is the "please marry my daughter." I didn't say that outright, but trust me, the implications are there. Next slide. Humor and large-scale social change. In modern media, I'm going back to The Simpsons because I love this show, it is critiquing current problems in current American society with each episode it makes. The Simpsons, it has a cast of incredibly ridiculous stereotypes. These stereotypes even have their own bowling team, and therefore we are making aware of current problems in our society and how people are viewed, and with this in mind, we can actually see what's going on, and we will be more informed as a result. Next slide. Humor used in liberation. Comedy provides us focus to topics that may or may not be understood. It educates painlessly and enjoyably, and sparks joy in doing so. Right now, I've been trying to sprinkle a little pizzazz here and there, to keep us all awake, keep us all moving. I know being here like 8 o'clock at night, like it's a bit of a drag, but comedians who say something serious about the world while make us laugh are capable of mobilizing the masses, focusing on a critical lens on injustices, and injecting hope and optimism into something seemingly hopeless problems. Can't talk today. The role of comedy in social justice. That was my quote. And next slide. Act 4. Through the tough times. My personal journey. All right. Next slide. Okay, so this is all personal stuff. I get the chair back, yay! This is where all the personal stuff goes on. When I first started doing this presentation, I was, okay, I have to do the slide presentation. Cool, I can do this. I'm going to be stressed out in doing so, but ultimately I knew I had the resources and help to get there, and I ended up finishing this on time, and wow, I presented, and I got a good grade. What's my reward? Pizza party in the principal's office? Oh, I'm doing this again? Oh no! And then as I got on stage, I realized that it's not as bad as it actually seems. Humor has been providing me the relief to actually be here on this elementary school chair in front of all of you. It's allowed me to become the person I am, and I know I am a rather quiet and rather soft-spoken individual when it comes to most social interactions. But when I do speak, I want to make things funny and make things lighthearted. And if I can do this, it'll make people happy and it'll basically speak words for me. I've always held this close to my family, how I interact with them, and how I just am as a person. I've always tried and stay on the side of being witty and charismatic. And it's who I am. People can talk for me. People are loud and people want their voices to be heard. I say, I just want them to laugh. That's about it for me. Thanks. You're all saying yeah, but when I was sitting on the stage, the only thing my mind heard was, no, I have to do this, no. This is great, thank you.